That's a surfing Santa. That's what it looks like to me. Surfing Santa.
Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need. Good morning.
Good morning, folks. Hands free. Of course, it kind of blends together a little bit too much. But that being said, I'm trying to charge an ancient iPod on my old G5 computer, which I can open. There's some directory in there called Found, and then there's something called Recordings. Now, the question I have is, what if I were to put recordings in there? I'll tell you, the way they go about doing this really is annoying. So in my recordings, I actually have a song now. But that's about all I have there. Anyway.
The only station that matters.
Let's not waste too much time on that. I got the headphones over top of the hat so that for those of you who watched yesterday, so I don't get this like ridiculous crimping of my ears. Other than that, here I am. And yeah, that's Santa. Where is it? Santa surfing. Everybody had a surfboard. I got a lot to. Today is the title card on this. In fact, let me just. Yeah, everything seems to be. Let's just double check, make sure we're live. Yeah, we're live and in color, so I could turn my mail off. NASA, we have a problem, but maybe we don't. So yesterday's show was a really big show, as what's that guy say, Lionel? He says the same things every day, but then again, so do I. So I don't know where you want to start this. Do we want to start this with the news? Do we want to start it with the weather? It's still the weekend, right?
Weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weekend weather.
All right. Let's take a look at the former United States. And it looks like that southerly flow is still continuing, but now we're getting this northerly flow that's kind of converging with it around, in the mid-Atlantic states, just above the mid-Atlantic states, above North Carolina. And there's definitely lake effect snow, though I have no verification on that other than the fact that my daily photo, which I'll briefly show you. This is a picture which is kind of weird colorization because there's this like street light next to my house. Let me just pull this up to the top so you can just get a grasp it as a individual photo. This is my porch. You can see it's a street. Across the street is another house. They're in the process of remodeling that double. Next to that is a hardware store, and then next to that is like a very nice brick apartment building that the landlord checks, does credit checks and stuff on potential renters and hasn't been able to find anybody that's lived up to, that hasn't been somebody who was like, ripped off their previous landlords. But I understand this new place across, the one they're remodeling across the street from me, this Haitian couple has purchased, and they're going to use that as what they call Section 8 housing in my neck of the woods. And that means, you get paid the state. It's a free welfare thing. So hopefully whoever moves in there, once they're finished their remodeling. I'm just glad they're remodeling. They're taking a lot of care in remodeling the house, that I think they're not going to be that loose with the type of individuals that they would put in. But as you can see, it snowed here, but the streets, because it was sunny yesterday and there was a lot of traffic, with all the shopping and everything. So the streets were warm enough that the snow just stuck on areas where, that didn't get a lot of traffic or sun, like my porch. I never left my house yesterday. I was supposed to get a FedEx delivery, never came. In fact, that's part of a follow-up story that we might get into a little bit later. But anyway, we'll talk about let's get back to the, weather. So in my neck of the woods, as you were able to see, it did snow. And today's forecast is calling for 60% chance of snow. In fact, it's currently 4:44 a.m. Eastern Time when I'm broadcasting this show. And it says at 5 a.m. there will be snow, but there's only a 60% chance of snow for the day. But snow is a 50% chance of snow tomorrow, or 40% chance of snow Tuesday, cloudy on Wednesday. So it's 30, the next couple days where I am, it's going to be 36, 34, 37 in the daytime, and 27, 27, 30, and then 37 at night, then 36 at night. So it's cold here. We're going to be below freezing at night for the next 3 days, and then just above freezing after that. So, no warm up in sight, and it's just the days are getting shorter and shorter leading up to the 21st, which is the shortest day of the year. And remember, the reason that is because the sun is the source of heat on the planet and climate, and the shorter the days, the colder the planet gets. So whatever you've heard from the UN IPCC or that Scotland Climate Summit, they don't take into account that there's this thing in the sky called the sun. In any event, as you can see, there's definitely lake effect snow going on up there. All that blue around the Great Lakes. So I would imagine anywhere from, the bigger cities like Cleveland, Erie, and Buffalo, they've all got to be getting some kinds of accumulations. And it seems to be leading into Ohio, not so much into Pennsylvania at this point, or even upstate New York. And the cloud cover, the southerly flow seems to be sticking again to the Gulf states. And the midsection of the country seems pretty clear. It's pretty miserable out in the Pacific Northwest. And there still seems to be some kind of like weird stalled cloud in the Great Plains. You see that? I don't know if it can't be an anomaly because it's like moving and building up, but some kind of crazy ass weather pattern, So anyway, that's pretty much it as we on this Sunday, November 28th, the end of this weekend.
Weekend weather.
Okay. So, yeah, this is where I live. Those are my concrete steps that I've had to repair because of all that. We get truck traffic on that street. See, at one time, this was just like a neighborhood. It was actually a community that then became part of the city. The city absorbed like all the surrounding like boroughs. I guess they needed it for tax purposes. But the city that this is now has become like, included in, is like they're in like bankruptcy or whatever. It's not the greatest. That doesn't stop them from charging us a hell of a lot of money. In fact, they're making us pay for all the street work, and they're hiding it through the sewer authority. Yeah, that's one of their little dirty little tricks. So anyway, that's that. In the grow room yesterday, I talked about the kale plant and some I guess it was cilantro. And if you look at this, it's kind of a weird angle because I had, the way I took a picture of it. But you can see the kale plant. It's kind of in suspended animation. I'm going to clip those leaves off. I'm about due to make some kind of soup or something. And see if maybe doing that will force more growth. The temperature in that room at night is like 60. Sometimes it could get up to 70 in the daytime if it's not too cold outside. But I'm going to have some trouble in that. I'll have to turn up the heat. Right now my electric bill is pretty low. And I do have one of those oil-filled radiators in there. And I have it on the lowest possible setting just to keep the room. Because out where I have the catnip on the outside, it's about 50 or close to 50 degrees. It's just barely hugging, what a plant can survive at. Anyway, that's my grow room that's semi-tied into the weather. But if you look further to the left would have been those radishes I showed you the other day. I have a number of, that room's pretty well filled with plants. So it's a little closet that I built this counter, and I've got some shelves, as you can see where the gnome is. And then on the left-hand side, I have like 2 or 3 other shelves that I built there. Or I think they might have been there when I came. That's what it was, a closet with a couple of shelves on the side. I guess the guy stored his garden tools or things. I don't know what he stored there, but I took the door off and I made it into like this grow room thing. So that's the story there, and that's our daily photo of the day then. We'll just get through this pretty quick. While this looks pretty funky, this is La Palma. This is from the Spanish site. This is the current official press release photo from Spain for the 28th of November, which is today. Pardon me. However, in the press release, which I didn't print the whole thing out, it did say that one of the newer fissures that had opened up had stopped flowing. And so it's possible that this thing may be, is like, whoever the photographer is, for this is like aware that these photos are being looked at. And I guess he's hoping he's going to sell, and probably he or she already did sell them to Getty Images or something like that. So, these are artistic photos, but they're really good. I'm not criticizing it. That's pretty wild photo. I wouldn't mind having, some of these photos that we've been seeing here would make a great poster on the wall. Be that as it may, despite the fact that this photo came out from yesterday, I guess yesterday or last night or whatever, it does, so far, what they're believing is that this thing may be slowing down. So that's good news for the people on that island. And I don't know if it's going to keep kicking out ash. And, of course, that's bad news for us. The Bitcoin, let's just get through that. I decided to put this on the 5-day today, but you can see this is the current numbers in the past 5 days. And again, this is 9:09 a.m. UTC, which is pretty much, the time now. Europe is about 5 hours ahead of us, basically. From where I am. So this is pretty much the current price of Bitcoin. And as you can see, just in the last 5 days, it really hasn't gone anywhere. It's gone down. Remember about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, it was up to 66. So, there's literally over $12,000 per Bitcoin loss of people over the past 2 weeks. And you can see, the reason I put the 5-day up is to show you that the fluctuations, there for a little while, it kind of went up, wanted to go, almost broke up to the, almost got near, well, not really, it didn't get really near 60, but it was the 59. But then it's taken pretty much a big dive. Now, I don't see why this would necessarily be affected by this Omicron thing, because sometimes these kinds of things are considered shelters. But we're going to talk about it. Today's a Flow of Consciousness show. And like I was saying before, I don't see digital anything as a shelter, because the uncertainty of electricity right now and the uncertainty of the technicians. And again, like most of the things that come to you on this broadcast, that's unique, a unique opinion. But anyway, if you're a Bitcoin person and you're watching it, you get the scoop here at 4:53 a.m. Eastern Time. Your Bitcoin's only worth 54.4. The title card that would have brought you here is Flow of Consciousness, the morning show with Tony C. This is like from the original moonshot, as they called it. They called it shot because they shot a rocket up into the air, which basically was a missile. And of course, we got Stardate and whatnot on there. I just threw that on there for the fun of it. But anyway, it's a flow of consciousness, so it's kind of, spaced. We might get spaced out, and we'll talk about all kinds of things today. But let's get the news out of the way. Mainly this Reuters story I wanted to go over about Omicron, since yesterday's show was pretty much dedicated to it. Now, I've seen some stuff come out of South Africa, and again, this is a scoop because this is just happening, as I speak, and the main news, other morning shows aren't even, aren't on the air really. So another reason why people should be watching this program and, and not wasting their money on cable TV. But I'm going to read you part of this. Omicron's mutations are likely to render certain COVID-19 treatments, including some manufactured antibodies, ineffective, said Dr. David Ho, professor of microbiology and immunology at Columbia University. This is a Reuters article. And however, this is the interesting paragraph, and this is the one that, we should all pay attention to. Experimental antiviral pills such as Pfizer Inc.'s, Paxlovid and Merck's, Molnupiravir. Okay. Now, some of these are based on those drugs that aren't patented that the media has talked against. Okay. See, the patent ran out on some of those drugs, and that's why they were demonized. And they were, told to be, thing. So what happens is Pfizer and Merck went in the lab and said, okay, what is it exactly that those things do? And there's two particular ones that you might know in mind, the two that can't be spoken. There's two of them, all right? One begins with an I, and the other begins with, is it a C or something like that? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So they go in the lab and they look at the molecular structure. What is it? And they go, what is it about those antiviral things that the patents have run out? So they cost, basically a penny a pill or something ridiculous like that. So we can't make any profit on it. So let's see if we can't fiddle around with that, with the molecular structure, chemistry, with our chemistry set, and come up with some antiviral pills. And they have. And what they're saying here is they target parts of the virus that are not changed in Omicron, and these drugs could become even more important if vaccines induced and natural immunity are threatened. Because yesterday, if you remember, the WHO basically said that this thing can reinfect people, and that the injections could not be as effective, or in keeping you from getting this, contracting this variant. But scientists say it's going to be several more weeks before they know exactly what kind of diseases will be caused by this. And other notes, the variants of concern include Beta, which was also first texted out, were ultimately replaced by Delta. Delta apparently is 99% of the cases right now are the Delta variant. That's how fast these things change and morph, and it's weird. But this is an opinion by this Reuters writer. The biggest question remains whether protection from COVID-19 vaccines, nearly 8 billion doses have been administered globally, will hold up. And will previously, there's nearly 8 billion people on the planet, and 8 billion doses have been administered. It's interesting. So at that point, you would expect that there would be, we would have herd immunity, will hold up, and will previously infected and coronavirus be immune from infection with Omicron. Experts also don't know whether Omicron will cause more or less severe COVID-19 compared to other coronavirus strains. So what they're basically saying is that they're kind of like this opinion here by Reuters News, which was taken off of Google. Okay, I'm not manufacturing or creating or giving you any medical advice or making up anything. This is matter of factual information that comes from Google News. Clicked on a Google News, and this came from Reuters. All right, this is what Reuters is saying. So, who are considered, who are basically one of the news sources that the networks, cable TV, and other people use to base their stories on. That's how it all works. It's like the Associated Press and things like that, the AP and stuff. So the idea is this is kind of saying that maybe some of the things in the WHO's release might have been too alarming, but then again, we won't know for whether or not it is or isn't for some time yet. Now, to me, that's a scary part because a lot could happen in that interim. The idea of the unknowns is weird, and it's already spread out of South Africa now. So it's going like wildfire. So the travel bans were too late, like I said, because this was originally discovered on November 9th. And in the U.S. isn't implementing its travel ban until tomorrow. And it doesn't it excludes American citizens. And some of those American citizens could have co-citizenship. In other words, they could be frequent. They could be business people that do business in South Africa, blah, blah, blah. So, they come in. Why should they come in? You see, in other words, if you're going to do a thing, you have to do a thing. You don't do it half-assed. So to me, that seems rather bizarre. Now, a libertarian point of view would be, well, you have no right to tell an American they can't come home. Quarantine, that kind of thing. But that's a lot different than locking people up in a house or forcing them to do some sort of other, jump through other kind of hoops. in other words, you're saying here's a place where there is a contagion, known contagion, people that have been exposed from this known contagion that has unknown, that were unknown. There are many unknowns, according to Reuters here. And we don't even know whether they're vaccinated, have natural immunity, or whatever, if any of that stuff is even going to work against this thing. I saw one doctor last night talk about something like there were 30 some different receptors or something on this that was, so they don't even, so that's a lot more than the Delta variant. Now, whether or not it's going to be harmful, I read another report that said this thing might be a dud. It might be similar to some of the other ones. There have been a lot of variants. We heard people hear about the Delta. They're talking about the beta one there. But there have been all kinds of variants to this thing. But the ones that come to the fore are the ones that, seem to spread quickly and cause hospitalizations. So we'll find out, I guess, is what they're saying. So you decide, the WHO, we went through that yesterday. Today we're going through a Reuters report that is, a Columbia immunologist from a microbiologist. And then we're hearing about these two pills that Pfizer and Merck have. I think a lot more people would be a lot more comfortable just taking a pill, right? These antivirals, especially since they're saying in this article they target parts of the virus that are not changed in Omicron. And these drugs could become even more important if vaccine-induced and natural immunity are threatened. So you have to, I was going to say read between the lines, but you don't even really have to read between the lines. You just have to kind of read that paragraph 2 or 3 times to see the intensity and what they're trying to say here. What they're basically saying is that these pills, if these pills actually work, okay, could well be all that's necessary. And that this question of this jab thing, suddenly becomes irrelevant. And all this craziness that's going on, remember, according to Reuters again here, this is an article that was posted on Google, that nearly 8 billion doses have been administered globally. Remember, there's only 8 billion people. There's not even 8 billion people on the planet. I hope I don't get an upset stomach today. I had a bunch of prunes for breakfast and stuff. Yeah, this is, Tony Caravan Live. So, we tend to just...
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
It's brutally honest show. I share everything. It's under people and blogs. I don't pretend to be something else, even though...
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Yeah. And speaking of quantity, quality, and correct, tomorrow is Hanukkah begins. And so I thought it would be a good time to, even though we've talked about this in the past, and you've heard it played on this show.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to give you the world premiere of the worst Christmas Hanukkah.
The worst Christmas Hanukkah Kwanzaa song ever written or sung. Add it to your playlist. Have some fun. It's a fun song. It's one of my more humorous beat poetry tracks that's worth, worth listening to. Man, is this thing bright. Reflection. These hats. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. So, yeah, that's the music feature of the day is me. I mean, it's like I say, it's the worst Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa song ever written. And it's live. That's the other thing about this,
Kwanzaa song ever written. So here we go. Let's give it a whirl. Thank you.
It's a great tune. It's not a great tune. It's a funny tune. It's a humorous tune. And it's, I don't know, it's true. I mean, it's not true for the elite, but it's kind of true for everyone else. So this is a Flow of Consciousness show. And there's a star date there. That's not really the accurate star date, from Star Trek, Hey, Scotty, could you give me the star date right now? Scotty, you there? Yeah. No answer. But anyway, that's the title card. Kind of a nice photo, too. Let's just talk about things here. So, I think I went through everything. I don't think we're missing anything. We're missing anything? Christmas feature? Oh, yeah. One thing. Black Friday shopping in stores drops from pre-pandemic level, according to NBC. Black Friday shopping in stores drops 28% from pre-pandemic levels as shoppers spread spending throughout the season, CNBC reported. So I guess the stores weren't as crowded as in some areas. But here's one that's scary. I was waiting for a FedEx delivery yesterday, 2 packages, and it says it was delayed. But look at this, FedEx kerfuffle. I love how they come up with these weird words to protect these companies because they want to keep getting advertising dollars from them. Investigation continues into hundreds of packages dumped in Alabama ravine. Hundreds of FedEx packages are found in Alabama woods, NBC News. The original article is USA Today. Best Buy stores in Burnville, Maplewood hit by mass thefts on Black Friday. So I guess this whole movement is moving around, They're calling them like flash mobs. They're getting organized in social media, Facebook and such alike. They're getting news coverage here, not on my show, but I mean, they're getting news coverage, photos on, people are seeing this stuff happen. And so they're going, hey, man, they're doing this stuff. I'm going down and they're doing it. It's pretty sad. What a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of like name stores, not Walmart or something like that, but sometimes even brand name stores are franchises, and they're in these shopping plazas now because most of the malls are, a lot of the malls are just gonzoed. But, you still have shopping plazas because you'll have like, what they call an anchor. In the malls, they used to call them the store's anchors, when you'd have Macy's at one end and Sears, which is no longer at the other. And those would be the anchors because they would put out the circulars in the newspapers and stuff. So people would come in to go to other stores, and the mall is in between the left and right of those anchors, unless it's one of those humongous malls that has, juts out in all different north, south, east, and west. But the same goes with these shopping plazas that have kind of replaced the malls, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Because wouldn't you rather, shop indoors with a roof over your head, especially when the shopping season seems to occur during the coldest months, right? So there's no reason why the malls, this should have happened. It's like many things that go on. It's like it's like why people build homes. Again, this is a flow of consciousness show, so we're going to go all over the place. It's why, they talk about the price of lumber shot up, then it came down a bit, but I mean, it's the shortages in certain things and all this other stuff. And they blame it on 1,000,001 things, but one of the biggest contributors is that people are just building these stick homes and developments right and left. Now, in my neighborhood, they've actually demolished, and I've said it before, dozens of houses, in between houses. And they were in disrepair. There were probably some of them that could have been what you would call fixer-uppers. Others that were beyond left to rot. But they were left to rot, because like this house here, if I wouldn't have purchased this house, perhaps no one else would have. Now, I purchased this house for under $20,000. And like I say, my rent, mortgage, and insurance is only like $200 a month. I mean, do you understand? So I don't understand whether you're an individual, a newlywed couple, or just some people living together, why you wouldn't just purchase a house in a neighborhood like this. I mean, the down payment is next to nothing. The down payment is so minimal. And as long as you have a job, the bank's not going to argue that you can't afford to pay $200 a month. The bank was giving me some flack at the time. I remember they were saying, because I was basically I was self-employed more or less. And, and they were like saying, well, kept asking me for paperwork for the income, And so I just stopped this woman who I was dealing with. I said, look, wait a second. I said, just hear me out and talk to your superior. We're talking about a mortgage that's going to be $200 a month. I've been paying a $675 a month mortgage plus all expenses. It's cost me almost $2,000 to live in the last apartment I was living in. I said, I haven't had any problems, and you could, get a reference from the landlord, right? And here's my income, here's my tax returns for the past couple of years. It's like, who can't afford $200? I said, if I go broke, I could afford $200 almost. You know what I mean? Welfare, gives you $400. I think it's $480 is what they pay for housing for the poor. So the point of the matter is, I don't know why people they build these. They just keep building new places when they have these beautiful old houses that just need paint and repairs. So I had some roof problems and still do, and I think I might be able, I have it under control, I believe. But I know by the spring I have a pretty good plan of attack that I will fix it. But I need really warm weather because I literally have to open up the roof to do it. I've got an idea. And I think it's going to work. The hole in my mouth is a little sensitive right now. But I ate cereal today. I'm trying to go back to normal with everything. So that's that's like a bizarre thing to me. I don't understand. Why would you want to live in some stick house? And the construction of these new houses, and I've talked to numerous people about that who live in places or who have lived in apartment buildings that were newly built. And they're plagued with issues. HVAC issues, leaking issues, electrical things, all kinds of stuff, because they just plop them together, and they just can't, and they can't find the crews and the people to work. So it's just like, get this thing, slap it together, get it up so we can, move on to the next one. We have a backlog of developments, but there's all these houses out here that are built with like wood, that you don't even, they don't even, you can't, it would cost you a fortune. The type of wood, when I had to open up a wall in my house I made my bathroom a little bit bigger. So I had to open up the wall to extend it about a foot so I could fit in a vanity, like kind of sink in a vanity so it wouldn't crowd the toilet, to be specific. Just to make the bathroom bigger, a little bit bigger, more walking space. And I went in there. You should have seen the wood that was inside the walls. And this is a 100-year-old house. And the plumbing guy had a plumber in because they had to move the, install the vanity and move some pipes over the drain and the water pipes, because I was moving over about 1.5 feet or so to sink this thing into the wall. And even that guy commented, he goes, "Look at that wood." He goes, "You just don't see that anymore." And of course, the part I opened up wasn't a support wall. And besides, it didn't matter anyway, because I doubled it up anyway when I I moved it back, and I put the supports back in it, anyhow. And plus, it was a second floor, so it didn't even matter. It wasn't like it's holding up the house. So these old homes, they just need, in other words, if you put it this way, if you're going to spend $100,000, and for some people, let's say that would be, they wouldn't even, that's like, they want to spend they spend $150,000 to $250,000. I forget what the average. Let's look at the average price of a house, since we're here, and we don't like to just talk out of our, what. Average cost of a home, of a house, we'll just call it house, in U.S. The median home price in the United States is $374,900 as of the second quarter of 2021. Home prices increased by 16.2% from 2020 to 21. The median home price increased by 416% from 1980 to 2020. The Zillow Home Value Index puts the typical home price in the United States at $293,000. Of course, Zillow was, they were losing money on those homes. So let's assume, so let's go back to what I said. Let's just say, they're saying the median price is $374,000. The Zillow index, which doesn't just include Zillow themselves, that includes the houses that are on Zillow, is $290,000. But let's say $250,000 just for the hell of it. All right. So you're going to buy a house for $250,000. All right. So don't tell me my calculator's not going to work. $250,000. Right. Yeah. Times 0.2 is $50,000. You can see that. Or did the Can you see that? It needs light in order to work. It's a solar calculator. Let's see if I could like totally force charges it right underneath the light, and then you'll see the 50,000. I don't know why it's not showing. Well, anyway. You can do the math yourself. All right. So you have to put $50,000 down if you were lucky enough to get a $250,000 home. All right. So, just use simple, let's just use simple math, mental math. So let's say you were lucky enough to get a home for $125,000, which is half of that. So your down payment would be half of $50,000 or $25,000. Okay? So you buy a $125,000 home, right? It's a $25,000 down payment. My home costs less than your down payment. All right? But let's take it a step further. Let's say you were lucky enough to get a home for $60,000, which is reasonable. In some areas, you get a decent house for $60,000. Well, your down payment then, right, would be about $12,000. Okay? Somewhere in that neighborhood. When it all came down to it, truth be told, my house wasn't much more, was more around in that range. It was like under 15,000, whatever. And then I put $3,000 down. So yeah, I paid about $12,000 for this house. So in effect, you could have bought this house for cash, but you don't want to buy a house for cash. Okay. And the reason you don't want to do that is that you want to have the mortgage because there's two reasons why I would recommend getting a mortgage. One is it's deductible. Okay, so you don't have to pay. In other words, that's a deduction on your taxes. As minimal as it is if you were to buy a cheap home. Okay. But say you bought a home, you were able to buy a $60,000 home. Okay. And you had 12, you have to put $12,000 down. All right. But say you were lucky enough to buy a $30,000 home, and you'd only have to put $6,000 down. And if you were able to buy a $15,000 home, which they do exist, right? All right, you'd have to put $3,000 down, which is about where I was. But what I'm saying is that if you have the money to pay, whether it's $50,000 down, $25,000 down, $12,000 down, $6,000 down, you're better off to try to buy yourself like a $30,000 home and put that money into either fixing a roof, repainting, remodeling. For example, they had those fuses that you screw in the basement. Well, the insurance company wouldn't insure the house with that. Of course, they don't tell you that till after you buy it. So I had to have an electrician come in and put in a circuit breaker box. And at the same time, I had the guy hook up a thing for a dryer, an electric dryer. And I had plumbers come in and I had to hook up a washer. Well, the first thing I did was put in a washer, dryer, and another thing. And that cost me a couple $1,000s to do that. It wasn't that much, So you buy a cheap home and you sink the money you saved, and I painted it. I did a lot of physical labor outside. I had to scrape the porch, and it was painted some odd colors. And I painted it white, but, as you can see, wherever I have the daily photo, you see how I have the columns there? I guess I could scrape a little bit along the bottom edge of that column. It's due for like a little scraping, cleaning, and whatever. But I'll do that next year. But I painted everything white. So I've got these two white columns. It's like the White House, the mini White House. And you see the inside of this is a covered porch, and it's got that like what they call wainscoting, the tongue and groove stuff that runs all along. A metal railing and concrete steps. You know what I mean? It has curb appeal now, you know? And I've got flower boxes hanging down, and on the side of it, there's a doctor's office next to me, but there's like this parking area where they park, so it's open. It's like you can drive through there, and I could park there because they only work during the daytime if I had a car. But friends of mine park there. You know, people who visit, because it's, you know, they don't work Thursdays, Saturdays, or Sundays, and they're only there, you know, during doctor's hours, right? Anyway, that's just a little house advice saying that even if you're a renter and you have roommates, you'd be better off to chip in and buy a house. You know, just draw up some kind of paperwork so to, you know, get into an argument with your friend that there's a thing in there, a right to buy out, you know, it's in arbitration or in some sort of you know, in some sort of disagreement or some kind of issue arises, that the other party has the right to buy out the other party, as opposed to the person that is, you know, causing some kind of confusion or trying to be a prick. You know, sometimes happens with friends or whatever, that you can't lose your house. The person that wants to live there can stay. And that, you know, so you have to make sure you see a lawyer if you're going to go enter into a property with somebody who's not, you know, your spouse necessarily. All right. Otherwise, buy it yourself. And if you have a friend who wants to move in, then just rent them a room. And that solves the problem, you know, right off the top of the bat. And if it were like me, like I don't like roommates. I'm too old. I'm over that stage. I mean, I lived with roommates when I was younger, way younger. But I'm just not, that's, you know, I don't care. And I have no need. But for example, I do have a 2-bedroom house, and I have 1.5 baths. So easily 2 people could live in this place, and, you know, there would never be like a waiting for somebody to get out of a bathroom or something like that. You see what I mean? So my rent, mortgage, and insurance is only $200 a month. So I could, you know the price of rents out there. So I could easily get a roommate and charge them $250. That would pay my mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and give me $50, and that would be enough to keep the bar stocked. And then all I have to worry about is my basic utilities, and I'm figuring if a roommate's gonna want something in their room, internet or something like that, or whatever, or some funky cable or whatever, they could do that themselves, right? And they've got their own phone and all that. So anyway, that's that. But I got on that tangent about that because it bothers me to see that I still see empty homes on this street that haven't gone into disrepair. And again, this one would have. I've been here I think 6, I don't know how many years. But it's something like that. So in 6 years, if that roof would have leaked, then it would have just been out of control. It would have made itself all the way down if I would have been up there patching in the attic. And so then this house would have ended up being demolished because it would have had water damage all the way down to the first floor and empty, and pipes would have frozen. Do you see what I'm saying? Or somebody would have stole the copper pipes or something. Just like all those other houses. And so I came in and I saved a house, right? And I got it really cheap. And the point of the matter is you're going to have to put a down payment down anyway. So you might as well, if rather than buy an expensive home, buy a cheaper home. And like I say, and rather, if the median price, if people is 393,000, but if they're saying more realistically it's 290,000, and I'm saying, okay, let's be very conservative and say it's $250,000, and then let's cut that in half to 125, but let's cut that in half again to say 62,000 or something like that, 62.5 or whatever. Just that money you're going to save on the down payment you would have to pay for a $125,000 home, right? Which would be $25,000. On a $60,000 home, it's only $12,000. So, if you were prepared to pay that kind of money, put that $12,000 into a $60,000 home, and you could turn it into like a modern home, a smart home, in fact, right? Because you could have it, you bring in an electrician and plumbers, and you can have the whole thing like rewired to, for like, as a smart home and stuff. And all that, have the roof gone over and everything checked out and all that stuff. And you could even hire painters if you don't want to do it yourself. People don't think. And your mortgage would be like less than the average rent, and you'd have your own home. So your monthly bill, which is like would have been your rent somewhere else, would be less than what your rent was. I don't know why people don't do it. More people don't do it. It's just one of those things. And I'm trying to think what set me off on that. And because, it's just like, it must have had something to do with wasn't the Daily Photo. It was, I know what I was talking about. Or I didn't finish. I was talking about the malls. That's what got me going. So why did they let the malls go to disrepair as well? Just like these neighborhoods. Like in my neighborhood no longer looks as bad as it did because they literally demolished a dozen homes that were abandoned and just left in disrepair. So now there's all these gaps in between homes, but at least they planted grass seed and stuff. And it's like, the homes that exist now are fine. It's like that picture I showed across the street. I mean, I don't know if you could really tell from this, wherever the heck it is. But if you look closely, you could see those stairs coming up with those weird handrails and stuff. They haven't gotten to repairing those yet. But you can see the siding, is clean where those two slats are. That's like the porch. Those are the holes that, like, if water gets on the porch, the water doesn't pool or something. They do that on old porches, and so they're actually aluminum siding in place. I'm not a big fan of aluminum siding, but what the heck? It's cleaning it up, and they're doing the right job, and they're taking their time at it. But I guess now that it's cold, I don't know if so much is going to go on until the spring. But I envision them fixing those stairs as well and all of that. That place is going to look pretty nice, right? So the malls, the same deal. So why did they let the malls go down? It's like when I was in Australia, and I haven't been in Australia in over 30 some years. Okay. And it rains a lot, like in Sydney, for example. On many of the streets, and I would say most of the streets where there are businesses, they have overhangs over the sidewalk that go right to the edge of the sidewalk. So technically you could kind of get out of your car or walk along the street, and there's a roof over your head. So when it's raining, you're you could go in and out of shops or pubs or whatever the heck it is. And it's kind of neat. I always liked it. And I always wondered why they never did it here, you know. But so there's really no need for a mall, you know, even in places like King's Cross in Sydney, you know. It was like a fun place to walk around at night. You know, it used to be the Ozrock Cafe. I knew the guy who owned that. I think he's in Dubai now. I think he opened one there or something like that. But there were some other, more down to earth, pubs. But there were usual shops, fish and chips and all that kind of stuff. And you're under these covered sidewalks. Doesn't matter if it's raining. And and they're lit kind of, and with signs and neon, the various things that stores and pubs and places are lit with. So it's like just this neat atmosphere, and it's a neat, you just even walking down the street and grabbing a slice of pizza or something or a drink or something. It just, it's cool. And we don't really have that here. Even in our major cities, they haven't really adopted that. And we went the mall route, and now the malls are, in most places, not in all, but in most places, have been abandoned. They become like weird places with just a bunch of empty storefronts and odd things taking the place of it. Like, people are having these like, some church service thing in one, or something. There might be one major store might still be there, maybe. But it's like it's gone are the days of Radio Shack and, just all those stores. I can't even think of all the names of the stores, But they were you just go in and out of these stores and browse. And you just go to the mall and spend some time. And not to mention the people you should just go to hang out, meet people. But I mean, I used to remember, when I'd go to the mall, just take a drive to the mall if I wanted to just do something. Like a day like today, well, this would be shopping season, so I would avoid it. But, on a Saturday or Sunday when I was working, this is years ago, and the malls were still there. I just drive to the mall and I go in, like Walden Books. It's that store that sells all that weird stuff. Can't even think of the name. But I definitely go into Radio Shack, Spencer Gifts. Right? I think that was the name of one of them. The Gap. All that kind of stuff. All these stores. Then there'd be these weird ones, and record stores. Which were CD stores then. You could buy posters, stuff for your apartment, gifts, goofy stuff, electronics. There'd be a computer type of store, sell software and games. You know what I mean? And you could just go in and browse. You didn't even have to buy, but I mean, and you're inside and you grab something to eat. There's a food court, or you grab yourself, some kind of orange Julius. That was another thing they had, right? That kind of stuff. An ice cream cone, soft pretzel with mustard on it. And they just allowed that whole thing to just fade. But, after the malls already destroyed the downtowns. And so then you're left with the downtown districts, and the downtown districts, they never did anything to compensate. Like in Australia, like I always said, why don't you put, extend awnings or coverings over the sidewalks in your downtown district? This is the last town I was in. And I said, because they had like an organization that was in charge of their downtown that all the merchants had to pay dues to or something. And instead they would put out flowers and, they had tree, weird things. It was just like goofy stuff they would do that was a waste of money, cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And if they would have put like awnings over the town, it would have changed the whole landscape. Because they had like an inside parking lot too, and if people could have literally parked in a parking garage, walked and been in the rain or snow, whatever, and literally been able to walk underneath on a sidewalk completely covered, they would have shopped. And then I even had this idea. Here's a free idea if there's anyone out there. Like nobody watches these shows. But, share it. Maybe someday they will. Another idea I said would be that you should put markers along the sidewalk, besides having it covered, okay? This is how to revitalize any small downtown, all right? This isn't like for New York City. This would be for any smaller downtown, all right? And, people want to take so many, they say take 10,000 steps or 5,000 steps. Really, a couple thousand steps is plenty, in my estimation, right? But what they should do is, my suggestion was, start at one end of the sidewalk and list every 100 steps. And that could be on the posts that go up to the thing. It's kind of like mile markers on the highway. So that people could be encouraged to come downtown to get their steps in. And they would have this covered awning over top, and they could walk and they could see their progress. They passed the 100 step, the 200 steps, made it to 1,000 steps and then crossed the street and come back and, and got their exercise in. And chances are they might stop because there's this overhang. I don't want to get the hiccups. Because there's this overhang, the cafes could have their chairs out there and little tables, and they could stop in the morning and have a cup of coffee or a smoothie or some juice drinks. It would be easier for the restaurants, places. And other places could have sidewalk type sales stuff out all the time despite the weather, which brings people in. People don't know that. Well, like I said, I was a creative director of an ad agency, so I have a million ideas, on how to do things for all. Just name the category. This one happens to be retail. But, it's the greed and the lack of creative thinking that allowed, this country to just basically fall apart. It's the same in the medical profession, It's like I was showing you, when I look at that, this thing, I don't know what, it's hard for me to find. I have so many links. It was this one. Like the second paragraph there to me is like a real mind blower. Experimental antiviral pills such as Pfizer's Paxlovid and Merck's Molnupiravir or whatever target parts of the virus that are not changed in Omicron, and these drugs could become even more important if vaccine-induced and natural immunity are threatened. See, that sentence is a very, interesting sentence. Because in effect, what they're saying is that these things in and upon themselves, see, they're saying they could become more important if the vaccine-induced and natural immunity are threatened. But the way, it doesn't matter how you read that, what it in effect says that those drugs actually are, virus killers. And, and probably all you need to do is take these pills. But I guess they don't make as much money on pills as they do, ordering getting $100 billion government contract for, the jabs. And that's another thing. That's what I say about greed in this country. It brought it down. See, there's no concern, capitalism and, in one regard, you just heard me say how to revitalize a downtown district, right? So that small businesses could make money, right? Which I'm all for, The way this society structures, you got to make a living. Forget this, you will own nothing and be happy. I mean, that's just so ridiculous and far out that there's like a couple of dozen holes in that statement that just, make it completely impractical. I mean, there already are at this given time, especially with this money they're giving people we've talked about on this show, the money they're giving $300 a pop for a child. So the welfare set and the people who are getting money from the government who have like 3 or 4 kids, or even 3 kids, who are getting $900 cash on top of free health care, free housing, and free food and other benefits. Oh, they own nothing because they live in, like that place across the street from me will end up being, right? Someone will live there for free. The people who own it will get money, but they get a check from the state or from the county or wherever the welfare money comes from. So they get that, they'll get their rent. But the people living there won't pay rent. Will have no health. Their health care will be completely no copays, complete health care coverage. And they'll get food, free food. And if they have a couple of kids, right, they'll get $300 a pop for the kid. And it goes down to $250 to the age 17. To age 17. That means for 17 years. So if you have a child, you're going to get $300 for about 5 years, and then you can get $250. But I'm saying that's cash, and it goes to the parent. You're not giving an infant $250, and I'm sure they're not going to give their high school kid $250. Whatever. And so the idea is, so the parents got cash on top of everything else. So they have no motivation to work whatsoever. And in your mind, you're saying, yeah, but why would It's like, no, you don't understand. There's a bus stop, right? I didn't mention there's a bus stop right next to that house. In the building next to it, there's a hardware store, and it's a bus stop. So they'll have a free bus pass. So if they want to go somewhere, they just get on a bus. Right? If they need to go, a medical thing, they have these med van things. I've used the med vans. I use one to, for the tooth to go back my second appointment. That's how I got back and forth, because I couldn't trust Uber. Right? Uber took me, but then they disappeared. There is no Uber available in your area. Ridiculous. So yeah, those people, that situation for the welfare set is true. And they've created this, that's what this whole thing is that's been done, is now they've reinvented the welfare, you know, set. I don't know what else to call it, welfare state. But for everyone else, somebody who has a job or something like that, the thing they, in their minds, back, in their minds, they're thinking, they want to do more, or they, there's things they want and stuff like that go beyond, like they want to drive a fancy car or something like that. But whatever the case may be, I'm not against, profit and people being in business and small business and stuff like that. I'm all for it. You got to live within the world you live in, the society, the way it's structured. I mean, it's like, in other words, it's like the game of life. You have to play the game of life. It's like here's this game board, and there's, on the box is, or there's a sheet of, a little booklet inside, and it says rules of the game, right? So you have to basically play the game of life and know what the rules are. And they keep changing the rules all the time. It's the same with social media, terms of service, right? That's like the rules of the game of YouTube, right? Or Facebook or Meta, whatever. Twitter, right? And so you have to play by their rules. It's no different than playing the game Monopoly or something, or, you know what I mean? When you're playing that game, there are certain rules, so you play within those rules. A lot of people don't understand that, and these are, which are most likely, are usually the people out there protesting and weird stuff like that. It's like, chill out, man. If you want to play the game of life, in a particular area wherever you are, then you got to play by those rules. And if you don't like that, then buy my book, Then What? Figure out your likes and dislikes and whatever, and find a different place to live where there's a different rule book, right? See, the rules of the game here on this street are totally different than the rules of when I lived in Manhattan, or when I lived in Capitol Hill, or when I lived in Malibu or Beverly Hills, or I lived in State College, or I lived in Philadelphia, Center City, Philadelphia, right? The rules change, by geographic location, by your whatever your status is, financial status, right? If you're living it, it's like, when you're making a lot of money, the elite live by a different set of rules than, the average working person, right? In many cases, they're above the law. Like, look at people in political office. They're basically civil servants. They work for us. We pay their salaries through taxes. But they break the law on a daily basis. Last month it was reported that there was all this inside trading going on in Congress. And these senators and congressmen were making, and their spouses were making millions and millions of dollars inside trading. And no one was sent to jail for it. But Martha Stewart went to jail because of an insider trading. And she was even a known person who was part of the elite. Well, why didn't Nancy Pelosi go to jail? Right? Or Ron Paul, for that matter. He apparently, Nancy Pelosi and her husband made $5 million on insider trading, but I think Paul was down for close to $8 million. And there were others. So Democrats, Republicans, it didn't matter. So they're above the law, right? It's like this diplomatic status. Diplomat could be caught in a hit and run or do some kind of thing in a bar fight, and they have like diplomatic immunity. Why? So it's the why is it's the rules of the game. That's the rules of the game. You didn't read, you get upset and you're out there making a piece of cardboard with a crayon or a marker on it and stapling it to a stick, and you're out there protesting somewhere. Well, my answer to you is, A, didn't you read the rule book? Didn't you see the rules of the game? And B, whatever you wrote on that thing, then what? Say you get what you want. Then what? What are you going to do? Right? Because it's all about your life, And so learn the game, and the rules of the game. And if you don't like the rules of the game where you are, then you have to go. Say, well, it's not fair that I have to move. Well, nothing's fair, When you get a cancer diagnosis, it's not fair, I guess you could say, but you got to deal with it. If you got a bad tooth, I mean, yeah, is it fair? I mean, it's not even the right word. It's just you have to deal with it. And the game of life is the game of life. You have to deal with the game of life, and there are rules, and the rules change. Like I said, both geographically and I guess you would call it like a class in the class system, because the U.S. has a class system. There's the working class, the wage slave, right? There's the upper middle. There's no middle class anymore, but there's the upper middle class, right? These people who are making $80,000 to $100,000 a year. It's like the jobs. It's like most people you see driving these SUVs, living in aluminum-sided houses in developments, and then you just keep going up into the the millionaire class, and then there's the billionaire class, and you've got the political class, and that's those elitists, and you have all these bureaucrats, and so depending on what part of the country you live in, or the city, or what class category or class you fall into, there are different rules to that game of life that you're trying to navigate through. And you have to figure that out. And a lot of people just never even think about stuff like this. And the simple-minded people, or people who don't think about it, are out there protesting, whatever. And then you have like that stuff we saw in the news, which was Best Buy stores in Burnsville, Maplewood hit by mass thefts on Black Friday. And that's in Minneapolis. That's a Minneapolis-St. Paul area. That's not San Francisco. So, and I'm sure it's happened in many other places. So they're just waiting for someone. See, it's like a tinderbox. It's like in a lot of areas, they're just waiting for a couple of people to do it, and then everyone will show up. Not everyone, but I mean all of the usual suspects, the people who are like on the brink and ready to loot, the looters. They're opportunistic looters is what they're called. And so if they see something that's happening, then they just go, oh, okay, I'm going to grab that. And so they go and they grab a Bose headphones and some, other electronic thing and drag it out the store. Because a couple of other people started to do it. And then they see opportunistic looters. Other people see it. Oh, yeah, okay, great, good. Because they're looking at the price of these things and they're going, man, I can't afford $300 set of headphones, $200 set of, these ridiculous Beat headphones. I can't believe the price of headphones. I mean, that's why these things these are Sony headphones. Now, Sony used to be a good name in electronics, right? And so at the time when I bought them, I don't know what I paid for them, but it was like maybe $19.95, maybe $29.95. I don't know, something stupid like that, at most, right? But I wanted good headphones and I didn't want something totally big, So I got these and they work good and they sound good in my ear. But they press on it a little bit. Now, I guess they're old. I've had them for a long time. I'd love to get a pair of Beats and not have this cable wire around my neck and stuff. Just be listening to it through Bluetooth or whatever. But I'm not going to spend $200 on a pair of Beats headphones, right? $200 for headphones? Talk about inflation. It's like these people, like I talked about Nike before, speaking of the mall, You used to go to look for sneakers at the mall. Now this is, this is before Nike, was painting these pictures of athletes, on the sides of buildings in major markets and pushing this kind of weird, their ideology, they're more ideologues than they are shoe manufacturers, even though the shoes are made in like sweatshops. So it probably cost, if Nike, I don't know where Nike makes their shoes, if it's Vietnam or not. Let's just see here. New window. Where do Nike shoes come from? Almost all Nike shoes, this is Google now, almost all Nike shoes are manufactured outside the United States. I was right. The leading manufacturer of Nike shoes is China and Vietnam, each accounting for 36% of the total manufactured worldwide. Indonesia accounts for 22% and Thailand for 6%. Nike shoes that are being produced worldwide. Okay. Do you know how much those people are getting paid to make Nike shoes in Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia? Right? What their weekly salaries are. The materials. And people are paying like, and Nike's like this, people have this little checkmark brand on as if it's some like great thing. When I was a kid, Nike's been around for a while. Nikes were like Keds or just regular shoes. It's a classic marketing ploy. My tooth is bothering me, or the hole where my tooth was. I have to be careful about eating on that thing. See, you can't really necessarily see, which is good. I just can't afford to have any more teeth go bad on me. And I don't want this one going bad because I don't mind, here's the thing. I said this before about hospitals and stuff. I don't mind going to doctor's appointments. I don't care if a dentist is working on my mouth. I don't care if somebody's operating on me. It's the hassle of getting there, getting to and making the appointment, arranging the whole transportation, getting to and fro, and all that kind of stuff that bothers me the most. The other part I don't care about. That's why I don't want this to get reinfected or anything like that. Because I don't want the hassle of trying to have to make an appointment, arrange transportation to and for the appointment, and all that stuff. The appointment, who cares, right? They give you an antibiotic or something. But yeah, so Nike's produce, like Apple, they produce these things in sweatshops. Those shoes probably cost them about a couple of dollars to make. You know? You know? I mean, you go to Walmart, I do it because I buy sneakers, every year. I have different sneakers, because I have house shoes that I've like weird sneakers, and I pay like I get them. If you go to Walmart, I'll show you my sneakers here. I'll show you because I keep them really loose because they're just like instead of slippers. Now these are funky, That's a cool sneaker, right? And I just keep it like the tongue, so to speak, part opened so I could just slide it on like a slipper. I pay $10 or something like that for them. 10 or maybe $16 tops. And then I have a pair of like good walking shoes over, that when I go walk my, do my thing, which I, might as well do. I trampled a little over a mile. When I do my mile, the walk to the grocery store or whatever. And I think I paid $19.95 or something for those. And they've got really good soles, and they're decent. They're decent walking shoes. And I had choice of colors. And then I have a pair of boots, but like that I walk in the snow. But I mean, they're like not rubber boots or anything goofy like that. Like hiking boots that you go hiking in. But that's what I'll walk with because they have good treads on them. And I've had those for several years now because I only wear them in the wintertime. And when I do that walk, right? Because they have a good grip. People don't shovel the sidewalk. So it's like, I don't want to slip on the ice. And even them, I know people who've paid $125 for boots that look like that. And I didn't pay that. I think I paid $29.95 or something. I don't know. I forget what it was. You just have to look around. So, this inflation is like ridiculous. It's just like the idea of a home. How do you have a house? I have a 2-bedroom house with a backyard, a detached garage on on like kind of, what was once a main street when this was its own little borough, but now it's part of a bit, it's the edge of town it's outside the town of a city. And, and I pay $200. My mortgage is $200. And that includes taxes and insurance. That's another cool thing about the, having a mortgage, because as opposed to paying, because the bank pays, it's all inclusive. So the bank pays the taxes and insurance and mortgage. So it's like their responsibility. So I just send, and I just, pay through my bank account to the bank, and because that's who I have my mortgage through. And I don't have to worry about the taxes or the insurance, paying the insurance and the separate bills and mailing this out and doing that and all that shit. But what I'm getting at is, if you've got $393,000 homes, 293 or whatever, or even, homes, $250,000 homes. And then you got a home here, or $125,000 homes. And you could buy a home, a multi-bedroom home for $60,000 if you wanted. Like in this neighborhood, or just, because this goes back, there's a couple, not a couple, but a number of streets in either direction, where there's bigger houses. I didn't. In fact, this house is too big for me. I say that all the time. I wish this was just one. I wish I didn't even have a second floor. Because I'm a studio apartment guy. Even though my last apartment was a 2-bedroom apartment, but it was just because, that was all that was really available at the time, and I was running the business out of the front room, so I needed extra space actually. So that's the truth of that. But prior to that, in many cases, I just lived in studio apartments types of places, or lofts, that kind of thing. To me, that's all I want. I don't want all these rooms, all this extra stuff, space. It's like, I don't need it. But I know people want that. It's like people have these dining rooms that they only use on Thanksgiving, or, special. Yeah. It's like they bring out the special silverware and plates. Well, whatever you want to do. But the point is, for $60,000 in a place like this, you could have one of those. You could probably get 4 bedrooms with a dining room, that you could keep your china cabinet in, for your special events. But that's not the median price. The median price of a house in the U.S. is $393,000. All right, it's $400,000 basically. And and then I don't know, some other weird statistical, because there's a difference between median and average. That's like, look into that, figure that out, the calculus of how they do that. But the average or something averages out to about 300,000 or so. And I can remember 20 years ago, it was only around 150,000. So it doubled. And so it's like quadruple or something now. And that's what that thing said right on Google. But even $150,000, I mean, I can understand if you're a couple and family and you have, two incomes and stuff, that you want you need a bigger house. But still, even then, I can't see paying more than $150,000 for a house. The price of housing is not going to go up. It's only going to go down. Houses age and taxes rise on big houses. In many cases, like when my parents lived on the street where I mostly grew up, the house, when they paid off their mortgage, you live, like my mortgage will be paid off in 7 years, but I'll still have insurance and taxes to pay, obviously. Well, I can remember my father saying that he was paying more in taxes. His mortgage, he had paid off his mortgage. He said his mortgage cost more than his taxes cost more than his mortgage, or were like around the same as his mortgage was. So in effect, he paid off his house, and it was like it wasn't like no big hurrahs, I mean, I have the deed to this house now, It's like what you don't, there's no victory, there. Santa surfing Santa. Just trying to cool off that spot. Keep yourself hydrated too, by the way. So, yeah, it's these are just I'm just babbling, but those are some of the kind of things I ponder often. Things I've talked about in my books in some cases, things you should think about if you're not happy or if you're, living beyond your means or something like that. Your quality of life is the most important thing there is. That's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like happiness is quality of life. It's interchangeable. And that should be the focus. Your focus should be to have a good quality of life. And if you're not, why, torment yourself? Because there's always a way. It's just sometimes you just have to think it out and figure it out. Spend some time figuring it out. So I don't know what's going to go on with this Omicron. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. I hope the hell there's some sanity somewhere, and that these pills, like these Pfizer and Merck antiviral pills and stuff, become available to the general public so we could just end this shit. All right? Once and for all. And stop having this war of the vaccinated versus the unvaxxed or something. I mean, this is crazy. Most 8 billion doses have been. There's close to 8 billion people on the planet. So, I mean, it's like, there's limits to things. You don't get to 100% in anything. There's some people that just can't get a thing because, and they, those numbers aren't really being properly given. For example, like I say, my mom's like 88 years old, and she's like basically one of her eyes she's pretty much blind in. She's had some bad, ocular degeneration or something like that. I don't understand the whole thing. Okay. But her eye doctor, she sight is very important. And for those who can't see, it's a horrible thing. I mean, people manage to do all kinds of things with handicaps in this world. And, you have to, admire them for their ability to, to just navigate through the world that way. Right. But, somebody who's had sight for 88 years doesn't want to lose it completely, because that's a big deal. And she has, where she lives, some of the best, eye doctors, that there are. And her eye doctor, the one who worked on her, because she had surgery that's, helped her for the longest time and stuff. And, like they thought years ago she might lose her sight and stuff. She didn't. But the one eye's pretty much gone, And her eye doctor told her not to get the thing, the jab or whatever. He said that, and he had some reasoning he told her. And I don't think they take that into consideration, people like that under doctor's orders or something like that. Like they don't include that in the count. So she's not going to get it because she would, in her doctors said to her that it could affect her in some way that would be, detrimental to her sight for some reason that I have no idea why. And I'm not pretending that I know anything about this, and I'm not suggesting that anyone, that this is any reason for anyone else to do things. I'm just telling you something that she told me. And, and there are other stories you hear. So, there are, people with heart problems or other things or other reasons that they can't, And then there are people who've had it, Again, they allude to it in this article here, where they say these drugs could become even more important if vaccine-induced and natural immunity are threatened. This is Reuters reporting, listed on Google News. All right, on Google search or whatever. I mean, it was on Google. This is on Reuters website. I got it through Google. Okay, so Google's not blocking this or saying there's something wrong with this, and I don't think anybody's gonna say Reuters. You know what I mean? These drugs could become even more important if vaccine-induced and natural immunity. So in other words, vaccine-induced immunity and natural immunity are threatened. And they're talking about threatened potentially by Omicron, but they don't know for sure. All right? That's what we have to hope, whatever, that it's not the case. But they're acknowledging it there. Right? This is this Columbia microbiologist, virologist guy, being reported by this Reuters reporter that's his field, right, of reporting and research. So they're acknowledging natural immunity, and they're also, and then it's also the case of people that for some reason or another a doctor has advised against, right? And then apparently, hasn't there been a case that was won by a judge where there are some people that have some kind of religious reason or whatever? And so if you take into this, read that article further down where it says nearly 8 billion doses have been administered globally. Okay? All right. And then at the same time, what I'm going to do here is go to new window, world population. All right. And I'm going to bring you in on that. Okay. Well, let me just okay this so you can see it. So the world population, 1960, 3 billion, 1970, 3.6, 1980, 4.5, 1995, 2000, 6 billion, 2010, 6.9, basically 7 billion. 2020, all right, 7.753 billion. How many people are in the world in 2021? 7.9 billion as of November is estimated. All right. It even breaks them down into religions. Believe it or not, Catholic Christianity still seems to be the number one religion, which is interesting. 10 of the richest people, this is pretty funny. This is a side thing, but this is just a flow of consciousness show. So Bezos is the richest guy, worth 177 billion. And I don't know, they've got, for some reason, the next two guys are covered. But you can see Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, Larry Ellison, Larry Page. Right? It's pretty crazy. This one actually shows you who they are. Bill Gates is number 2. Warren Buffett is number 3. This is, that's January 19 in 2021. Yeah. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at here, let's get rid of this. Title card, flow of consciousness. There's 8 billion doses out there. I don't know if that means, divided by 2 or not or whatever. But the point is, there's almost 8 billion people on the planet. And for all we know, there could well be, because, there's so many parts of this world that, the accuracy of counting people on a planet the size of the Earth is ridiculous. It's amazing they're able to get that much. And that's just because of tax collection, The elite, right? Jeff Bezos is worth $177 billion. It's insane. And he's playing around with little rockets and toys, boys with toys, I mean, if I had that kind of money, 177 billion, you could still have 150 billion and take 27 billion and probably clean up every high crime district or every inner city, real problem inner city area. Put in new housing, remodel places, clean it up, and do whatever. You literally make a difference in society, in your life, instead of just spend a couple $1 billion just to go to the edge of space to say he was in space. What I'm trying to get at is that there have been enough people who seem to have been inoculated that this thing should have been pretty much eradicated, right? Because you're never going to have 100%. And even in the case of the anecdotal thing I was talking about, my mother, she's in unfortunately, she's in a facility undergoing some kind of therapy, physical therapy and stuff, right? She's had some problems. So that there are many of these people who are not even exposed to the general public at all, at all. And so that they're not a factor. And then there are these, I keep trying to say when they say, it's in the 192 countries and stuff. There are other countries that are so isolated and people so isolated. They're not accounting for the tribes in the Amazon and stuff who have had no contact with outside people ever, right? There are tribes like that, I've been involved in expeditions to the Amazon, right? I've told you about that. The Amazon's endless too. The whole idea of deforestation, they're destroying the Amazon. It's I showed those pictures, I don't know how many, a week or so ago. The Amazon is just endless. And those trees, those forests, those aren't just trees like you see in your neighborhood or near the city where you live. Now, some of those trees are as wide as a house, almost. They're just huge. The canopy and stuff is just incredible. There's no danger. If you want to call that the lungs of the planet are pretty healthy, despite the fact that they were chopping down trees for forest and, for farm land and other uses. They're not, it's like a fraction of a fraction. But what I'm getting at is that there are places, there are people isolated in Antarctica, right? what the winter, like they have the thing, I don't know if you know about this, but there's like a couple thousand people there, that, they're wintered there and they're completely isolated. No one goes in. And in the wintertime, there's no planes in, no planes out. I mean, they can emergency airlift somebody, but I mean, there are places in Africa, certain countries, and in the bush that, are just not accessible by, no one really cares. And the individuals that live there don't really care. It's the same as the Amazon, some of the tribes deep in the Amazon. They just don't, when people encroach on them, explorers or whatever, they just go further deep into the Amazon. And it's deep. And so, a lot of people don't understand that. And then there are these homesteaders thing, which is really big. And there's people in like places in Canada, Siberian towns and different places like that are just not exposed to, the world, the rest of the world. Someone would literally have to, bring it to them, so to speak. So the idea of the concept of 100% is just not realistic. And then it's just like in this country too. There's like people in this neighborhood and stuff that just, there's an old man that lives in a house up the street from me, across the street. And I don't know what his case is. And then there's another guy who's a handicapped vet. He's got these signs, POW signs, and, his porch is blocked off and it says oxygen in use and like whatever. And so the only I think the only people that would ever go in there might be some kind of nurse who obviously would be totally protected, before, going in. And there's some other old guy. Nobody ever goes in that house. And there's like me that I never go anywhere, really. I mean, I go to the grocery store, but if I do, I have the mask on, so to speak, or whatever. And I'm in and out. And when I go, the store opens at 7 a.m., right? So when I go, I'm not going today, but when I go, I leave my house at it takes me about 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes to get there. And I leave my house around 10 of 7. Sometimes I have to stand out in front of the door for a minute till they open it. But I'm the only guy in the store. And I like it that way. I have the store to myself. Because people don't get up early. It's amazing. And so I go in with my mask. I shop in the store by myself. The checkout person has a, ridiculous mask on. The store is just open. They're running their air circulation. So your store just opened. So the air's been like circulating all night long. Right. So there's like nothing that, unless their flawed HVAC system, that air in there should be like pristine as possible. And I grab my items. I go up and down the aisles, grab my items. And when I go in there, they have wet, like these antibacterial wet things. And so I grab those and I wipe off the handle of the cart that I push, in my hands. And I go through the aisle. And if I grab something that's a bottle or something weird like that, I rinse that off with these antibacterial, viral wipes. And I do my checkout. And when I come home, at my door, I have a hand sanitizer. And I blow my nose. That's the one thing that a lot of people, like I say, don't do. I blow my nose right away. Excuse me. And wash my hands if I'm going to do some kind of thing. So there's a lot of people like that too, that if they do go out, they're just, they keep to themselves, they stay away from people, and they're really not, shedding or getting anything. I've been tested. I tested negative. And technically tested negative because I had a CT scan of my lungs for other reasons. Like it was a thorax, the whole bottom, my middle set from my heart down to my stomach type of thing. Not just a while ago, not too long ago. And that my lungs, the base of my lungs and all the areas where this thing goes were clear and clean. But I've had the swab test and that other, the one that hurts, came back negative. I think I held the thing up here on the show a couple times. I have it over there. And I've been around people who've had it. A friend, I said, who had gotten the shot and then caught it. It was reinfected. And I didn't get it. And they had it bad, and they were like 14 days quarantining themselves. But that's the type of person that usually gets a cold, and people who don't. So what I'm saying is that, just to end this show, this was just a flow of consciousness talking about it. I guess we'll find out what's happening. We don't know. Yesterday's show might have been scary, and it could be that. Or it could be not, could have been overblown. And all the other things I talked about, But the key thing, the takeaway from any of my shows is just that, it's about your quality of life and living a good quality of life. And, you've got to ask questions to people. You have to hold people accountable. And, and if enough people ask the people that we've put in those positions, ask them questions, demand the truth, and demand things like these pills that, in the Reuters article and stuff like that, and say, hey, enough is enough. We want a quality of life. You guys are making enough profit. All right? See, that's the part I don't get. They're trying to push like socialism or communism on this country, but at the same time, they're giving these billions and billions of dollars to these companies that are just like extending this thing because it's a big money maker. And so we need to hold those people that we pay the salaries of accountable and say, hey, we need some concrete evidence that, of what's really going on. Don't just say wash your hands and social distance and get a shot. Tell us really what's going on and what's up with those pills, and why can't we get what Joe Rogan got? And if that's the case, that this thing could be cured, like Joe Rogan and Tim Pool and Psaki and Trump and all those other people, then why is there still a pandemic? Do you see? And if there are these new pills that could, like I said, if I'm going to end this show, it's running long. But if there are these two pills by two different companies, Merck and Pfizer, that these drugs could become even more important, as if they're already important, if vaccine-induced and natural immunity are threatened. Well, even if they're not threatened, the point is they target parts of the virus that are not changed in Omicron, which means if you understand the English language, in other words, they target the part of the target the virus, and that's it. So, make those pills available to everybody, right? And Jeff Bezos, why don't why don't you top 10 billionaires each chip in $1 billion and have the pills distributed across the country, and and let's just end this thing, and let's go back to normal. I just took antibiotics because of this tooth thing. Pain. Had to take four pills a day for a week. It sucks. I set an alarm and wake up at midnight to take a pill and try to get back to sleep. But I'll gladly do it if that'll, kill off whatever's out there. And I'm sure nobody's going to be resistant to a frickin' pill. So why don't they just offer those pills to, say, the people who didn't get the vax? Or to everybody? And say, okay, enough is enough. It's done. Let's go back and have a decent quality of life and live and do whatever you want to. And if the congressmen want to, break the laws and do insider trading, what are we going to do about it? If the FBI wants to, illegally leak information to the New York Times, well, they're going to do it. They've done it. They just did it with the Project Veritas case. They're going to do it, right? If the guy with the name F, who's been in charge of this whole thing, wants to lie, stand before Congress and be caught lying 3 times, perjury before Congress, which basically is like a felony or something, I think, and they don't want to prosecute him and they won't fire him, so be it, right? If you guys want to, you guys apparently have this free reign where you're you're lawless. It's lawlessness among the FBI, the Congress, and all the bureaucrats in Washington. They could do whatever the hell they want to. Okay, well then be lawless and live your ridiculous life. And you billionaires, things happen. So you just live your life in the lap of luxury and lawlessness. But why are you tormenting us since you guys are doing so well? See, that's the other question that needs to be asked. Right? And Nancy Pelosi, if you and your husband just made $5 million on one illegal trade that other people would go to jail for, well, why are you tormenting us? Joe Biden's up in Nantucket or whatever the heck he is, vacation, walking down the streets without a mask. I saw some picture. Walking down these quaint little streets where the elite, meet. All right, you want to do that? That's fine and dandy. But why are the rest of us going to be tormented? And like kids in schools and stuff like that. See, questions need to be asked, and they're not being asked. And I don't understand the media, because the media is basically shooting themselves in their feet. Because, it's their world too. It's their country. What do they think? It's like all going down the toilet. The toilet's has already been flushed. That's the Great Reset. They flushed the toilet. And it's a question or not, what else, as the toilet, everything's going down the toilet. Somebody needs to shut the water off and stop it. But the media is turn the water pressure on. Let's get this thing totally flushed. Flush the whole country down the toilet. Anyway. Have a great day. Go to ROCKFLUX.com. If you got any money left on your credit cards, get a shirt. You'll get this stuff in time for the holidays. And or if you just buy it for yourself, get my book on Amazon. The links to everything, all my stuff is at ROCKFLUX.com. You can get power thing, you might need a power backup this winter, especially with what they're doing. They're getting rid of all the means of producing electricity. Electricity doesn't grow on trees, right? And get my book, get the print version of my book, or get it, get